In the last few months, I have given Node.js interviews in a lot of product-based companies. And trust me, some of the questions were really tricky. So I have curated the top 5 most asked and most difficult Node.js interview questions for you. And not just questions, with simple explanations and answers. Make sure you watch this video till end and comment Node.js and I will provide you a detailed answer sheet for these interview questions. Let's not waste the time and let's get started. The first question we have is, what's the difference between process.nextTick, setImmediate and setTimeout? This question sounds easy, but it actually tests your understanding of the event loop. So event loop is very important concept when you are working with JavaScript. Event loop is used for asynchronous programming in JavaScript. In Node.js also we have the event loop. In the browser also, like in the front end also, we have the event loop. Learning event loop is very much important. I have explained it in one of these questions. Don't miss that question. So how to explain this question in the interview? In Node.js, all asynchronous tasks go through something called event loop. So we have this event loop. It just checks if the call stack is empty or not, and if the call stack is empty, it will add the task from micro task queue. Like micro task queue, it has the first priority, and the second one is macro task queue, macro task or event queue or task queue, you can say. In JavaScript, if you see, these are just functions. So these are called tasks or the callbacks. These three functions like process, nextTick, setImmediate, these are the functions that schedule the callbacks. Like this particular function needs to be run after 3 seconds or 3 minutes, whatever. They are about the time. This is the work of these functions. What is the difference between process.nextTick, setImmediate and setTimeout? Process.nextTick adds a callback to something called a microtask queue, right? Process.nextTick callbacks are added into microtask queue. That is the difference. This means once this current operation finishes, before moving to the next phase of event loop, Node will run all the nextTick callbacks immediately. Promises are microtasks, as you know, right? Microtasks. In browser, we have mutation observer. Mutation observer. It is also a microtask. Just like that, process.nextTick is also a microtask, but it has a higher priority than promises itself. So it is one, and these two are called, we can say collectively two. Process.nextTick has a higher priority than promises itself. So it adds it to the microtask queue, but it runs before the promises. That's an important point here. Event loop. One cycle of event loop is called tick. One cycle of event loop is called tick. In event loop, there are multiple phases like idle phase, hold phase, check phase, close phase, right? This complete cycle is called a tick. Process.nextTick runs before it. Next part is set timeout. Set timeout, if you see the event loop phases, the first phase is timers phase, and after that there are some phases, and then we have the check phase. So process.nextTick is running here. In the check phase, we are running setImmediate, and set timeout are running here, right? In the timers phase. Set timeout. What we have learned? The first, process.nextTick, the second, setImmediate, and third, set timeout. Suppose sometimes what happens is the execution set timeout can also be executed before setImmediate. We can't guarantee that setImmediate will always process it first, then set timeout. But in case of IO cycle, what is meant by IO cycle? Suppose you have some IO event which has some completion callback. Okay, so let me clear this out. Suppose you have some IO cycle, that means it has some completion callback. In that we have setImmediate and set timeout. Okay, in case of IO cycle, like in case of the completion callback of any IO event, like the file read operation or anything, right? In that case, the setImmediate will always, we can guarantee here that in that case, setImmediate will always run first, then set timeout. But when it is not in the IO cycle, we can't guarantee about this sequence of these two. This is the exception that you have to remember. This is about the first question. Second question we have is, what's the difference between cluster and worker threads in Node.js? So this question is about the scaling Node.js applications. This is kind of asked in the advanced Node.js interviews, and many people don't understand the basic difference between them and they mix it up in the interviews. What is the difference between these two? Cluster is a built-in module in Node.js. Suppose you have one Node.js application. That application can be like one single file also, or the entire application. Okay, so index.js is running, or bootstrapping file, and it is running. What happens is it has a single call stack and single event loop, right? It has a single event loop and call stack. Whenever you have some long running synchronous code like a for loop with 10,000 records, so it blocks the call stack and it will not allow the new incoming request to be entertained. Okay, in that case, it becomes very hard for the concurrency of the application. What happens is cluster, what it does is it creates one application which has multiple forks, we can say. One running Node.js application is considered as the main or master of the cluster, and the other ones are just copies. You can consider that there are multiple copies of this index.js, okay, like the separate application running on separate cores, CPU cores, that can be logical and physical as well. It's a different topic, but yeah, just to understand, there are multiple like octa core and this kind of CPU cores are we have, right? It will create, the cluster module will create or run index.js multiple times, okay, and will declare one running application as the master and others are like the forks. These are called forks. What will happen, suppose this thing like this call stack or this event loop is running, each copy will have the separate one, okay. If this is running your incoming request, if this one is blocked, it will pass to another one, and just like that it will have like concurrency in this, okay. Even if your application is blocked for incoming requests, it will be added to the multiple copies like the cluster forks in that case. So that's how the concurrency and the asynchronous programming is handled using cluster. The cluster is a module, but nowadays the PM2 like process manager handles the clustering very well. It is open source, and in the most of the production grade apps these kind of tools are used for clustering. In cluster we saw that there are multiple copies of index.js, that means the node applications. But in worker, there the concept is a bit different. In worker threads, and this is cluster and this is worker threads. In worker threads, what happens is we have the single application running, okay. We have the single application running, but it has some heavy processing task, some heavy processing, like it can be anything like calculation, or the simple example I told you like a for loop. In that case, what happens is it delegates its task to a separate thread, okay. The JavaScript is single threaded language, that's why this thread is blocked, okay. But in case of Node.js, we have multiple threads available through the libui library, as we know. In this case, this heavy calculation, like the heavy calculation will be transferred to the separate thread, and it is mostly async IO based, event based. It will listen to some event, it will start the processing, and once the result is there, it will publish it and it will be called by the main application. And that's how the heavy calculations are uplifted to the another thread, and they will be handled in the Node.js application for not blocking the main thread. There is a single process in this, but in here we have multiple processes. That is the difference between worker thread and cluster module. What happens if you call require multiple times for the same module? This one checks your understanding of the module caching in the Node.js, how module caching works in the Node.js. When you require a module for the first time, Node.js loads it, if required executes it, and then caches it in the require.cache. Suppose here we have file A, file B, and we are requiring the counter module again. For the first time in the execution sequence, whatever comes first, it will load it, it will execute it, and it will store it in the require.cache, okay. Require.cache. Require is an object, and that we have the cache in which we'll store this module. In the next time, whenever we are requiring it, it will not execute or load this module. It will just pick it up from the required.cache. That is the one important point here. Even though we imported it in two files, both share the same instance. So the memory is saved in this case, and it is because of the caching, and also it creates our application memory efficient. Why interviewers ask these kind of questions? They want to see if you understand that modules in Node.js are singletons by default. Modules are in Node.js are singletons by default, meaning one instance is shared across the app. What bonus tip here, if you ever want to reload a module, so you don't want the caching and you want to reload the module again, so you have to delete the required cache, but that's rarely needed. So that's an important point here. Let's head over to the next question. How does Node.js handle asynchronous errors in callbacks and promises? This question is tricky because the error handling mechanism in Node.js depends on whether you are using callbacks or promises. So it depends on you are using the callback approach or promises approach. Callback approach is default because most of the things on Node.js are written in the callback way. But yeah, most of the new devs, or as per the new JavaScript programming, mostly nowadays developers prefer the promise way. The error handling depends on which way we are using. In Node.js, we use the error first callback pattern. What is error first callback pattern? Whatever callback we have, so we have one operation here, fs.read file. We are reading the file.txt, and after reading the file or while reading the file, what we have to do, we will define in this callback. Okay? So that's how the callback pattern works. We register a callback upfront, and it will be executed whenever these operations are going on, or based on some events. In case of error handling, we'll always have the error first. In the callbacks, you must have seen that data is one parameter that in which we get the data in the asynchronous events. Just like in the dot, then we have the data that is returned from the asynchronous operation, right? But in case of this, Node.js relies on the error first callback. Error first callback pattern. We have the first parameter always the error, and then the data. Okay, based on the error, we can handle it like error reading the file, or if the error is not present, we can retrieve the data and process it. That is the answer to the callback way. And promises, it is straightforward. We use the dot catch, or if we are using async await, we use the try catch. That is a simple. So one twist can occur in that also. Promises, as I said, they are easy to handle, like try and catch. The next follow-up question that interviewers may ask is, what happens if you don't add the catch block, or if what happens you don't add the error handling using the catch. In that case, Node.js triggers one event that is called unhandled rejection. Okay. When unhandled rejection event is emitted, when you don't handle any asynchronous task using catch block. If you don't write catch block, and that operation is rejected or failed, in that case, unhandled rejection will be triggered. We can directly write code for handling these kind of unhandled rejections, so that we can have one global error handler, and we can show some generic message like something went wrong or server went down, something like that. Yeah, this kind of twist or follow questions can be asked. So coming to the last question, we have the a question: explain the event loop in Node.js and how it's different from the browser. That is more important question here, because most of there are tons of videos available on the internet and YouTube that how the loop works in browser, but most of the videos cover only the browser part. But in case of Node.js, there is certain difference in that, and how it is different from the browser, that I'm gonna explain in this question. This question is asked in many advanced Node.js interview questions. How it is different, we'll see. So the event loop mechanism is a mechanism that allows Node.js to handle many IO operations asynchronously. Even though it runs on a single thread, it allows the Node.js to handle multiple IO operations concurrently. In browser, as we know, I'll quickly revise it. We have a call stack in which the functions are added, these functions, and they will be executed in the stack way. And event loop is a mechanism. Its task is to constantly observe that the call stack is empty or not. If the call stack is empty, there are types of queues we have. One is micro task queue, one is macro task queue. Micro task queue has a higher priority, in which the promise, mutation, observer related callbacks are added. Macro task is kind of events or any kind of operations that are asynchronous will be added here. If the call stack is empty, event loop will first add the task from micro task to this, and if the micro task is also empty, then it will go to macro task and it will add it here into the call stack. And these callbacks are added into the queue once these web apis means like anything like set timeout, or anything that is related to asynchronous things are handled by the browser or the runtime. In case of Node.js, it is Node.js. In case of front end, it is the browser who handles this. This is about the quick recap of what event loop does. In case of Node.js, we have some differences here. We don't have these many phases in the browser, but in case of Node.js, we have almost 6 phases. The trick to remember these are TPI, PCC. What is T? T is timer space. What is timer space? In timer space, it executes the set timeout, or set interval. These kind of timers are executed in timer space. This is pending callback phase. P is pending callback space. Pending callbacks. Whatever callbacks that are deferred from the earlier cycle of the Node.js event loop will be handled in this pending callback phase. Then we have the idle phase. Idle phase is mostly internal phase. So this is for internal optimization of Node.js. Then we have this P. This is poll phase. This poll phase is mostly for waiting the new IO events, whatever you are doing, like file reading. So it is delegated to libui and these kind of libraries. They are processing something, and once this is done, they run the completion callback. Okay, this is poll phase. Is wait for the completion of the IO cycle, and it registers the new callback and executes it. The check phase. The next is check phase, in which any set immediate callbacks will be executed in the check phase. And the last C is close phase. Close, like the socket like connections or anything that where we need to close the connections, it will be executed in the close phase. If these six phases collectively are called a tick. In the first question, I explained about the tick. These six phases, once this completes, it create one event loop cycle, and this is called a tick. This is how these phases are particularly implemented for the Node.js, and it's not, they are not present in the browser, because in Node.js we have IO event based architecture, in which we have the file system and many modules. We need these kind of phases to handle that. Also, what is the difference between Node.js and browser runtime? In browser, we have the user interaction events like mouse click, keyboard press, and these kind of events are there. But in Node.js, we don't have those events. That is the difference we have. So these were the top 5 most asked and most difficult Node.js interview questions that I have actually faced in my interviews. Comment down below how many of these you already know. And if this video helped you, please press like button, subscribe to my channel now for these kind of videos to support me, and share with your developer friends who want to learn Node.js in depth. Also, don't forget to comment Node.js, and I will share you the detailed answer sheet for these questions so you don't miss it in the future, and it will be helpful for the revision of your interviews. That's it for today. Bye bye.